At 3, 2, 1, let's record a podcast. Hi, everybody. My name is Jake.
And I am Alex.
And this is Uncut Games, the Replay Cafe weekly talkcore podcast. And we're sitting down today with, I'm going to let him introduce himself, actually.
Hey, how's it going? Norris Howard here, host, producer, and head of collegiate content for Checkpoint XP and Beasley Esports.
Damn.
That is a great title.
Well, that's several
Thank
titles. So you're not just, I guess I'm familiar with your work as a broadcaster. But,
Yes.
Okay, because that was so fast.
He's really a video game journalist.
Yes, if I had to boil it down.
First and foremost.
Yeah, if I had to boil it down, we're going to say video game journalist. But in my occupation every day, it's, podcast host, producer, and then also I am the head of our collegiate esports division, which covers collegiate esports.
Shit. All right. So the show we listen to with it's Checkpoint Daily, and that's the main one, right? For you?
That's correct. Yeah.
I was going back and listening to a couple episodes. That's fairly new, isn't it? It goes back to December.
It is. So around the end of 2020-ish, when everything kind of was still crazy, we made a decision to kind of rethink everything with Checkpoint XP. And one thing we thought is we didn't have a daily product. We have a weekly syndicated radio show that goes out to hundreds of affiliates.
And that one's national, right?
Yeah. It is national. Yeah. It is national. International, I believe we still have a few Canadian affiliates as well. So yeah.
So what do you guys cover? Because when you say collegiate, right? Is it Michigan? Is it Detroit?
It's North America.
The whole thing. You cover everything.
We cover everything.
Damn. All right.
Your show specifically, or the network of the heading of Beasley?
The way it's set up is we have Beasley Esports, which is the more umbrella organization, if you will, that owns also the Houston Outlaws in the Overwatch League, as well as Checkpoint XP, the media side of the brand, as well as a few other things that they're working on. And then Checkpoint XP has sort of two entities to it, being the normal sort of everyday podcast, the national radio show, and then we have On Campus, which is college esports. So in of which I am the head guy of.
The head honcho.
That's right.
So how did you, I have a background in journalism, it was my degree, and Alex's was in creative writing. Obviously, that didn't go so well for us. And this is a very personal podcast.
That's putting it lightly.
Well, something worked. But I guess what we're interested most when we do this kind of podcast is stitching together like the local Detroit, maybe like wider Michigan universe of what gaming is in this state. And so I'm interested in you and kind of your story of how you just climbed from not just like being a journalist, which is near impossible, it seems to me, after trying. Yeah. And then even games journalist, which I think is a dream for so many people.
Yeah. It's interesting because obviously that's what I went to school for. That was what I originally set out to do.
Always video games.
Not necessarily. I remember having a conversation with my mom, and I told her, all right, because I wanted to be an astronaut as a kid, and she was just like, you're trash at math. It's not going to happen.
What part of math is getting shot in the sky?
Listen, she was like, your spatial awareness, none of it. It's not going to happen.
You're going to hit the moon for sure.
You throw up when you go on the Galaxy 3000 at the theme park. It wasn't just
that. It was this. I was the kid that bumped into things because I was just I was so focused on having fun and doing what I wanted to do that everything else didn't matter. And you can't be an astronaut and have that kind of personality.
And gaming is much more stationary. Like once you sit,
you're there.
Yeah.
Although Armageddon gave everybody hope that maybe they could get sent into space.
Absolutely. And it was just one of those things where she said, what you're good at is talking and writing. I was like, so I should be a journalist. She was like, thank you for making that connection. And so after about 13 or 14 years old, I pretty much said, either I'm going to do politics, sports, or video games. In terms of, I didn't want to just be a regular run-of-the-mill anchor somewhere in
Nebraska.
That's
where they start you. I got friends, man. I'm glad I failed.
So do I. Guys I went to school, J school. Not everybody got to go to New York or all that. I got a lot of friends who became meteorologists in, Kansas.
Shit. It's gonna rain.
It's gonna be windy.
It's stay in your basement. Like That's pretty much it. And so after I got to college, and
I'm sorry, where did you go?
Wayne State.
Okay, so you've been in Michigan your whole time.
My whole life.
All right.
I have no intention of ever leaving.
Always Detroit.
I'm very happy to hear that.
Always. And there's a reasoning behind that. I feel sort of a strange responsibility towards Detroit.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for me, growing up, seeing the generation before me, so many of us, especially, black folks, we went to school, got pretty successful, and so many of us left. A lot of us went to Atlanta, LA, Texas. Some went to New York, not as many, but you went somewhere else is the point.
Exactly.
And not many of us outside of those who worked for like the plant or the phone company or something like that, like stayed in Southeast Michigan. And so I always felt like, how can this place get better if all the talent leaves? And I'm not saying I think I'm some...
No, but you're using the word
person.
talent as in just people behind a mic or a camera or anything, any part of that. And that's so true, where you go to LA and everyone's roommate. We had someone come in here who was like, yeah, my roommate was Andy Dick for like 3 weeks or something like that. It's like that can happen to you. And I just...
Yeah, and the thing with here, and what was especially cool, is that when I first enrolled at Wayne State, it was around 2006, 2007. I had a couple years in community college that I kind of pissed away. I didn't really respect it.
OCC?
No, Henry Ford.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, strangely enough, started thinking it was more of a reality to do games journalism, because they had a show there run by students entirely that was video game music. And so I listened to it religiously, and it was like the only thing I liked about Henry Ford Community College.
And it was just the music. They didn't do any like news. They just did
No, it was just music, straight music.
Just listen to the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack on repeat.
Yeah, but they had deep cuts, man. They would listen to they played a couple songs from like the Bomberman Hero soundtrack, and I was like, first of all, I was like, only 5 people I've ever met ever played Bomberman Hero. So I thought it was cool. But anyway, long story short, I go to Wayne State, and this is around the time that people started really looking at Detroit as investment material, because everything was so cheap.
Yep.
So you start seeing, stuff like Great Lakes Coffee starting to pop up, and all these other sort of small businesses start to pop up in what at the time was Cass Corridor, and now we know it as Midtown. And that really started happening while I was at Wayne State in college. And so it was this strange metamorphosis that was happening.
Was this 08 or was this before 08?
This was around 08. So
Okay.
it started really in about 07, and then the market crashed.
Right.
And then everything became dirt cheap.
Everything
buy.
became dirt.
Yeah, like legit, everything sucked.
Yeah.
But if you were somebody who could buy buildings,
Right.
you could definitely do it here.
Yeah.
So they did. Long story short, I got an internship at WDET, which is our NPR affiliate here.
Great station, yeah.
Great station. Had great mentors. Met a guy by the name of Nate Bender, who I didn't know at the time was the host of a podcast I was listening to all about Final Fantasy 14. And
You didn't know?
Wait, and he was at WDET?
he was at WDT. I listened to this show because he plays a character in the show. So he's like this hyper turned up version of himself. And he's not that way in real life at all. And so I talked to this guy. I was like, God, you sound so familiar, bro. Like, do you do a podcast? And he goes, yeah, it's called and at the same time we went Limit Break Radio. And I was like, fuck me, it's you. How? And he goes, do you listen to the show? I was like,
Do people listen to me?
yes.
Hey, but that's how everyone feels, I bet. Like, just to meet someone like, I know, you're like, no, you don't.
It's a
Fucker.
Final Fantasy 14 specifically
Yes.
podcast.
And a podcast in like pre-2010.
Yeah.
Yes.
So not on Spotify,
No,
Stitcher shit.
That's
Where
great.
were you listening to this on?
it was like straight through their website. It was like a shoutcast.
What?
Yeah,
shit,
it was like
okay.
an RSS feed or like a shoutcast or something.
Guys,
it
what's
was
an
nuts.
RSS feed?
Yeah.
I'm not joking. I
I've
am,
seen the button. I don't know. It's
I
something
am
to do with
just old enough to
podcasts.
know that it exists and have
It
never
just
interacted.
literally was like hit this for content. That's
Okay, it's the
basically what it was.
Old style subscribe.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we got to talking about Final Fantasy 11 and 14, these games that we loved. And I left the internship. I was done, got my credit, and I was like, dude, let's stay in touch. He says, absolutely. So I started doing nonprofit work here in the city. He calls me one day and he said, I have this idea, and I think it's a great idea, but there's a whole section of video games that I just don't know shit about, which was like sports games, fighting games, and a few other genres. And he was like, I know you know it. Do you want to do this show? And I said, absolutely, dude. Like, you guys are flying out to Vegas for Fan Fest and stuff.
Oh,
you got
damn.
Patreon subscribers. Like, people are paying to listen to you. Absolutely, I will do this for free because I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And the genesis of Checkpoint started that way, and here we are 4.5 years later.
It should be noted, I've only listened to maybe 1 or 2 episodes of your show, but you are, I think, an encyclopedia of video game knowledge.
Yeah. Because that's what I was going to bring up,
Thank
too.
you.
You said this guy doesn't know sections, and I feel like that's something we confront also at having started this podcast is like, we know our lane really well.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, because I was listening to him, like, is it just like searching things up beforehand, or does this just go so far back for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it my whole life. It was interesting because video games, when I was coming up, was this kind of social pariah kind of thing.
Yeah, get picked
But
on for it.
To my parents, it wasn't, because as a 6-year-old, I went, Mom, it's teaching me how to read. And
Did they buy that?
And she was like, you're not wrong. And that's how I justify getting video games, reading EGM and Nintendo Power and, you know, stuff like that. And so it became sort of this, I don't want to say obsessive thing, but it really became my means of education and research in many ways.
Right.
Do you have like a first like memory or the first game you played and you have a memory of it?
Absolutely. I was in Annapolis, Maryland, and I was like 5, and we were playing track and field at my aunt's house.
Is that NES?
Yeah,
Oh my
with the
God.
pad, where you had to
I've seen those.
She had the pad, and you had to stand and run on it to actually do it. Yeah, and duck hunt and stuff like that. Yeah.
So you are all the way back to the beginning.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What was your first console?
The first console I personally owned was SNES.
Okay.
Which still to me is the greatest console of all time, even though the PlayStation 2 is the best one if I'm being objective.
I was driving today, and in my head I was like, why does the PS2 loom so large in my brain where like they keep releasing subsequent systems, but in my head it's still the PS2 era?
Because
something happened in my brain there.
Because the software and what was released for the PS2 was so all-encompassing. It was a machine that had not just one, but multiple games for everybody.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that most people went to their parents and went, it plays DVDs, and they went, well, I gotta buy it.
Well, I can buy it. Yeah,
I gotta
it's cheaper
buy it
that way.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
So you got SNES. I'm curious. Best NES games then.
I am weird,
Okay.
so
Go
I
ahead.
love Yoshi's Island.
That's weird.
It's weird. Probably the game I had more fun playing than any other game on SNES was Kirby Superstar.
Okay.
Simply because I thought it was 2-player, it was straightforward, and it just was flat out fun.
Somebody, when we were first opening and we were like, hey, what games should we definitely get? So that was on somebody's list and they sent it to us.
Kirby
Yeah, it was
Superstar.
me.
Oh, what? Whoops.
Yeah, we weren't taking notes on who was messaging us at that point.
No,
You know,
you know what?
I remember the
it's
game.
it's because it's in my opinion platformer perfection. And I hate Mario games. So
Whoa.
yeah.
That's a bold statement.
All of them? Because I
Not
think
all.
in the PS Mario's the PS2 of games, software versus hardware.
No, not all.
Right.
Mario World, Mario 3,
Mario 3 again.
Mario
Best of all time.
64. Sure.
Okay.
These are seminal games
what's
that
your-
every human being must play.
What's your bone?
It's too cute.
Really?
It's too bright. It's too
Okay.
cute. I grew up in Detroit, man. There's no let's go. No,
Should we
hate that.
reskin Mario with like RoboCop?
No, it's you know what? It for the
RoboCop's
people
cool.
who love Mario, that's okay. I don't judge you for loving Mario. That's not a game I judge people on. I judge people on many other games, but not on Mario.
Okay.
Because I get it.
Yeah.
But it never spoke to me like that ever.
Did you have a game or even like a couple games that did?
Street Fighter.
Street Fighter, really?
Yeah.
Ooh. And that was like in a direct like reflection of like, I look around me, I see this, I come home, I play this?
It was Street Fighter Final Fight. I'm a huge Capcom stan.
Okay.
And so when I played Final Fight for the first time, and they were in like late 1970s, early 80s New York, which is what Metro City is based off of. And so it's like the Warriors. So there's graffiti everywhere. There's broken glass and abandoned cars and trash can fires. And I'm just like, I know that.
Yeah.
I know that. And I'm not necessarily saying that, where I grew up was like the worst place ever. Sure. But that was more familiar to me. And so I saw it and I was like, even the people, the way they dressed, I was like, that's how my older cousins and aunts and uncles dressed. And it just felt familiar.
Well, even when you drive down, I was coming back. I got up Tony the other day and I drove all the way back from there to here. And you can see it still. There's like those water towers with graffiti on them still in the city. And I don't know if other cities have that anymore, but I was like fucking New York in the 70s, like the Warriors was my reference. Or Hey Arnold also, weirdly enough, with the towers. But it's like there's something here also, you're talking about staying here, where it's like people, when they think of New York in the 70s, think of like the most productive, famous time for that city. And I think that this city has a similar thing where, there's like a cause statue down there. But you can come over here and there's also like, it's a little bit Wild West. And you can be here, be talented, stand out in a small pond. I don't know where I'm going with this anymore, but I just like agree with you so heavily on something I didn't expect to come up. Like,
no, but it's
there's an energy that's very similar.
Yes, and that's what spoke to me. And so around the time when I started getting old enough to really kind of understand the concepts of Street Fighter and be good at it, was kind of the last era of arcades.
Right.
And so we had an arcade way out in Warren on like 14 and Van Dyke called the Butterfly.
People have mentioned this to me.
Yes, the Butterfly is like this cultural touchstone because it was the only like arcade that you could go to because all the rest of them closed. And so we would go to the Butterfly all the time. And I would be like this, huge frame glasses, 9-year-old kid just washing kids 5, 6, 7 years older than me in Street Fighter.
What a fucking loss, by the way. Like the Butterfly. I was working part-time at a place when we started this place up, and they're like, yo, just like the Butterfly? And I was like, what's that? And like even you illuminate, like they had Street Fighter and people would go there and probably like lines, right? Like,
it was amazing. And it was around a time where really I started to get my foundation understanding of like esports, because you would put money on it. You would do money matches. So you'd be sitting around and there'd be a kid, he'd be 14 and I'd be 10 and I'd be like, put 5 on it, and he'd be like, shut up. I'd be like, I'm serious, put 5. And then he'll pick like Ryu or something, and then I'll pick Guile, and he's like, I have no idea how you just did that. And I'm just like, it is what it is, man.
I understand the game.
The meta champs.
It is. And then I'm talking, we're talking about old Street Fighter too. So there's like handcuffs, glitch, and all this other type of stuff. He's just looking at me like, this is dumb. Here's your 5.
Right. No, I did the same thing. I think at a bowling alley or something. Like I kept beating this dude who was probably like, he like eyebrow piercings and shit. And it's 2003 and it was Tekken 4 and I didn't know what I was doing, but I was still winning.
Yeah.
I just understanding fighting games like that, and the dude was having the same fucking reaction. Like,
Absolutely.
Why are you 5?
Absolutely. And so that really kind of, it lit something in me in terms of video games. So fighting games has always been a passion of mine. I've always loved them. Yeah. And then I had a girl I went to middle school with, and I'll never forget her. Her name was Marianne. And by the way, I go to this really weird K-8 school where it's like a social experiment. I kid you not, it was a magnet school, and it was a social experiment specifically made to be racially diverse. And so we had like Native American kids and Latino kids. Yeah, it was like it's closed now, obviously, but it was like 7 Mile and Telegraph, so far northwest side. So this little white girl, Marianne Funk, so strange, and she had this Brady game strategy guide for Final Fantasy VII, and I was just like, I didn't know you played video games. She's like, I love video games. I was like, what are you playing? She's like, I'm playing Final Fantasy VII right now. And I was like, that long ass game? And she's just like, yeah, it's great. And she just handed me the Brady Games guy and just thumb through it and see and tell me what you think. And I'm just going through it and I'm looking at the art and I'm just like, this looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
And meet up with one of my best friends at the time, and he just bought it. Sat down and watched them play through the first hour, and I was just like,
Transfixed.
I thought you were going to say the first disc.
no, like the first hour, and I'm just like, my life has changed. Like, I must have this game, I must play it, and I fell in love with RPGs after that.
Especially coming from a game like Street Fighter, where it's like short rounds and competitive.
Nothing could be less arcade. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what really did it for me was the narrative aspect and learning that these characters had motivations, they had personalities, they swore, because again, it goes back to why I hate Mario. It's just like,
Well,
here we go.
it's
Like,
only gameplay. There's only game loop, which
Yes.
is great,
Yes.
but nothing that you're really talking about. The two things you've highlighted so far, like narrative and world and just
Immersion.
competition.
Yeah.
Immersion and competition don't really exist in Mario.
no, which is part of why I don't like it.
It's so crazy. I've never thought about that. Not at all.
Yeah, and so you know, I use those as touchstone games for me, and also I'd be lying to say my dad wasn't a big part of it as well, because my parents got divorced when I was very young. So my dad lived on the east side, my mom lived on the west side, and so I experienced the wholeness of this city. And you guys know Detroit is landmass wise ginormous.
Massive, yeah, man.
So I was all over the place, and my dad's household was a Sega household. My mom's household was a Nintendo household. So I would go back to school and I would tell my kids, they'd be like, "Oh, what are you playing?" I was playing X-Men, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's really cool." And I was playing this, and yeah, and then I was playing Chrono Trigger. I was like, "Oh yeah, I started playing that." They were like, "Wait, I thought you just said you had X-Men." I was like, "I got Sega and Nintendo," and they looked at me like, "Oh my god!" Because listen,
I got a mom and a dad.
when you grew up
Uh-huh.
in the inner city, that was a marker of wealth.
Yeah.
Really?
Is that if you had both consoles,
Right.
which
Because they've always been $300. And
Yeah.
everyone pitches a fit every time, but they've always cost the same amount. Games have always been $60.
it's always been 60.
They weren't always $60.
When were they not
They
60
used to
bucks?
be more.
How much more?
There were times where N64 games were $64.
Well, that's just cute.
Yeah, also dumb, but
Yeah, also
cute.
very stupid.
But yeah.
So you're an only child then, it sounds like.
my mom's only child. I'm my dad's oldest son.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That explains, because I feel like most people would be like, "Oh, my older brother, I played this with them."
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
I
you've
was the
got the
older brother.
experience
I
of
was
that,
the
yeah.
older brother with my younger siblings, and I would do stuff like play Resident Evil 2 and then get to the part where the liquor jumps through the window and lock my brother in the basement, run upstairs, cut the lights off.
Fuck.
So, yeah.
So I get it, because we talked on our last podcast. My brother was here, and so was our guest, obviously. And we all had this conversation where I realized I was the only person with the older brother gamer experience, which is different from the younger brother gamer experience. And we're talking about competition. And something, I found it hard to transition into watching esports. Competition, love it. Viewing, I was always in the driver's seat. So for now, I'm like, there's still like some distance there. Was this hard for you to make a switch?
Not really, because as also a meat sports fan,
Yeah.
the spectator side of it, I understand. Yeah,
We were talking also in the last one. Like,
I
what do
like
you
that
call
term.
like regular sports? Because you can't just
in the
call
industry they refer to it as traditional sports,
Sure.
it. That's so.
but that's so stupid.
That makes me
Yeah.
think of like Greco-Roman wrestling
exactly.
and
And so I
Yeah.
like meat sports.
hammer
Yeah.
toss.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
exactly.
with athletics was the most fair, because I
I
would
even
never
hate
call
that because so
Really?
many esports programs in college fall under athletic departments.
That's where I differ. I don't believe in that at all. Again, we were also saying like you'd be like have a guy carried out on a stretcher because his fingers cramped or weird or something. Like athletics is like you gotta be. I don't know.
No, I agree. There should
Unless it's
be
DDR.
there should be a delineation.
Yeah.
I think absolutely it is sports, but to say it's physically
Sure.
on the same level is just not
It's
honest.
a different fucking
It's
thing.
not honest.
Absolutely.
And there are people in the industry who try to make those comparisons, and I'm just
Right.
like, stop. Don't,
Well,
don't
exactly.
do that. Don't do that. The mentality, the mental preparation behind
100%.
it, absolutely the same. But everything else, stop. You don't have to hit the gym for 3 hours.
No.
You should.
You should
You don't have
practice.
to.
Some people practice for much longer.
You hit the aim trainer.
Yeah.
Do you believe in that? We're talking about that. We're talking about Halo yesterday. And Alex's
It's like asking
theory,
if you believe in dinosaurs. I feel like it's factually proven that the aim trainers
I
are
really just want to throw this
beneficial.
at him. He thinks that aiming doesn't matter.
In Halo.
In Halo.
No, it doesn't matter in Halo.
Talk to me about that.
It doesn't matter in Halo.
Finally, someone
Then
on my level.
How could anyone be better than anyone else if aiming doesn't matter? The core component
Movement.
Right. Part of movement is aiming.
Not really.
Not in Halo.
Not in Halo.
Explain.
Not in Halo. Okay, here's the thing. All right, when we're talking about any console-based shooter, okay, whether it's there or not, there is aim assist.
Of course.
Period.
Yeah.
Whether you mess with it or not, it's built into the foundation of the game, right? Because you're not using the mouse.
Yeah.
So the differentiator between who is actually good at Halo is positioning, movement, spatial awareness, the ability to have the map knowledge, as well as knowledge of the weapons. Once you click the button, doesn't matter anymore.
The bullet's going to the center of the screen.
It's going to the center of the screen, no matter what. There's barely bullet spread, and especially in Halo 1 and 2, there's little to no bullet spread. So it doesn't really matter. Where is the enemy? In the middle of the screen. I'll hit him.
You articulated my
I
argument
don't know
so
the
much better than I
difference.
could.
Hang on. Very well articulated. I see that's the difference because I actually agree with him now.
Meanwhile, right, if you
You're
play...
right.
Now, this is a bit of an unfair example because it's a much older game. Meanwhile, if you play Warzone, sit somebody in the middle of the screen, equip almost any weapon, and just click the button, and there will be bullet spread. There will be, there'll be kickback. There'll be all these other factors that have been put in the first-person shooters now. But in Halo, we didn't have that sophistication yet.
Well, we also had the conversation yesterday, and I think it matters. We argue a lot about Warzone v Halo because that's the fucking breakdown. But it makes sense to me in that universe where I am a future super soldier that this shit does not matter. The spread of a
you know
bullet,
what that is? That's a retcon for a poor game mechanic.
That is so crazy.
It is.
It's not a retcon
It's a
at all.
retcon. That is your headcanon justifying why they didn't put in bullet spread into this game.
My whole
I
thing
don't know
with
if that's
it
true at all.
is that I watch him play, and when he goes to like aim down sights, quote unquote, nothing changes.
Nothing
like,
changed.
All it is a physical zoom or like a mind zoom, but really he's actually delaying when his bullet's going out.
Yeah, I am not a big fan of Halo in general.
Interesting. Because that was one of the first competitive
Absolutely.
at esports games.
I will give it all the credit it deserves for changing the landscape of video games as we know it. Not just the competitive aspect, but the notion of bringing, couch co-op into that next frontier.
Right.
Of like everybody loved Goldeneye. Nobody was ever thinking of let's make a Goldeneye League. Nobody said that. But when Halo came
TM.
when Halo
So
dropped-
many dudes. Wait, real quick. Goldeneye.
Yeah.
Just hitting on a classic. Do you have any opinion? I think it's a terrible game. That I have
Perfect
no
Dark
attachment.
is better in every way.
Ooh,
Okay.
my man.
I agree because I played Perfect Dark recently. I played Goldeneye recently, and I just can't make Goldeneye work
I'm
for me.
gonna tell you this. Goldeneye, great game. The James Bond skin hits it with all the nostalgia.
Right.
It's stylish as hell. It's
Yeah, sure.
sleek. It's got all the cool feel of it. Music, all that. Perfect Dark. Take anything you like about Goldeneye, play Perfect Dark. It's better.
Yeah.
It has reload animations, alternate fire for
I didn't
every
even- I
weapon.
didn't
I
even
haven't
notice.
played it in so long, but I feel like you could put me on any of the maps and I would know my way around.
Absolutely.
Like the elevators and everything about
Absolutely.
those
The
maps.
map
It was so
design
much bigger.
The map design was wonderful. Yeah, Perfect Dark was
Perfect
a great
Dark League.
game.
TM.
not happening. But okay, so going a little bit back because we're talking about Warzone, and again, because I'm talking. Do you play Warzone? Because it sounds like it's out of your.
I play it
two
sparingly.
tenets. Okay.
I play it sparingly. When I get the itch to play a battle royale, if I'm going to play a battle royale, I play Warzone.
Does that tie into any at all your? I don't want to call it dismissal, but maybe just taste for too cute, perhaps Fortnite style games.
I'm gonna be honest.
Okay.
I'm gonna be painfully honest.
Please.
Fortnite, I don't have the mental capacity for it.
Yeah.
Fortnite, to be good at it, is low-key a big brain game.
Really?
I'm gonna be
The
honest.
building and the actual mechanical skills.
To play Fortnite at a high level, absurd.
Too big.
Absurd.
It's
Big
too
brain.
hard.
It's too hard.
The fact that people can do it on mobile also blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too hard. I'm too old. All of it.
I think the too old is a big part. It's like when I tell you that like little kids can learn like 3 languages if you get them before they're 7. I think if you get a kid playing Fortnite, by then it's not a big brain game at all because they just make that space in their head.
Now, in the same sense, before I started doing Checkpoint, I was doing the after school program. Trying to teach a kid to play a 2D fighter is near impossible. Unless they grew up in a house where their parents played 2D fighters.
What's the snag?
You know what? I think it's just it's the chess matchness of it.
Okay.
Obviously, before you get too deep into frame data and all that stuff, at the base minimum of it, you got to say this move will beat that move. Before
rock,
you get
paper,
too
scissors,
deep, this move will beat that one. I think in Fortnite, because everything is so kinetic and ever changing, that a kid can just say, "I'm good at building. I'm good at shooting. I'll just outplay you."
I think there's a lot of educational content that people can consume and watch now too. So if they want to learn how to be as good as X, Y, or Z, then they watch that and they go, "Oh, so if I, hold this button while I drag my mouse, I can build in a circle quicker."
Exactly, as opposed to unless you put a controller in your hand and do a quarter circle motion, you will never know how to throw a Hadouken.
No, it's all muscle memory.
Exactly.
I mean, like you can almost not know how you're good at Street Fighter and still be good at Street Fighter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah.
So did you? I mean, you obviously said already that you had both a Nintendo and a Genesis. Did you, growing up, have every single console in your house, or was there a point where you switched, like only Sony, no Xbox?
There was a point. There was a point. So, my dad bought a Sega Saturn.
Cool.
And I was in love with that machine because there was just stuff on the Saturn that just didn't exist anywhere else, and I thought it was so cool. But it was a crap console. The controller sucked. Everything about it was bad. But I could play Fighters Mega Mix and Panzer Dragoon, so I loved and X-Men: Children of the Atom.
Panzer Dragoon, the dragon game,
the on the rail dragon shooter.
Okay, I've seen that one. Yeah.
So I loved a few titles. But after that is when PS1 came out, and at that point it was like the Final Fantasy machine, so it was like I have to get a PlayStation, even though I had a Nintendo 64 and that stuff. But the moment I got a PlayStation over at my dad's house, I became a Sony person. This might be too personal. Did it make you go to your dad's house more often, or like change like where you wanted to spend your time a little bit? Not necessarily. What it did do is it made me prioritize the games. So at my mom's house, I played a lot of mediocre games because that's where I lived most of the time. Throughout the week. And then over my dad's, I had to be real selective. So it was like, go over my dad's, he's got the PlayStation. Okay, I have to play Final Fantasy, and I have to beat it this weekend. I was like, I'm on disc 2, I have to beat it this weekend.
No fucking jokes. Knuckle down.
It's got to get done.
Dad, we can't go play anything else.
He would tell me, he'd just be like, go outside, cut the grass, and I'll leave you alone. And I'll be like, but Dad, you know the routine. It's get up, breakfast, X-Men, Spider-Man, video games. You know what I'm here for. And he's just like, you're not going to hang out with your brother? He's giving me the tips off the guide. He's my helper. I need him. This is my wingman.
Is he plugging in the controller into the port 2 and not doing anything but holding it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so we're going through this whole thing, and he really I appreciated it because he really let me do that because he saw it was bringing me and my brother closer.
Yeah.
And by the way, my brother became a savant in his own right because, I mean, we bought Gran Turismo one year and he is untouchable in any racing game ever. And I don't get it.
The one genre I can't play. I can't even play Mario Kart.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Pad, steering wheel, doesn't matter. He's good at it.
Has he ever played Driver?
Yes.
Driver is like infamously, for me at least, the hardest driving game. Can't get past the first mission. Can't move on.
He beat it as a 9-year-old.
Oh my God.
What?
And I just looked at him like, what the
Does he...
No.
You played Final Fantasy VII, became a journalist, right? Like, did he play Driver?
He became a personal trainer.
So your mom didn't have that conversation with him where she's like...
No. None of my parents, my stepmom, my dad, nope. They were just like, you're good at this.
All right,
you're good at this.
He didn't want to become a race car driver or anything?
He had a phase.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
he had a phase. He was big into NASCAR for a while.
If we were planning like a heist of some kind, he'd be the guy to call though.
Absolutely.
The baby driver guy.
Absolutely. It'd be him. It'd be him without a doubt. But no, it didn't really change my feelings, especially after PS2 came out, because then I had it in both places.
Okay.
And so now I'm just taking a memory card, which is
right. A lot easier. You're not hauling everything.
Yeah, so it was super cool. And by the time I got in the PS2 era, is when me and my dad really started bonding over video games, because our first bonding thing was Streets of Rage 2, which is still, in my opinion, the best video game soundtrack ever made. But we really started bonding over like beat 'em ups, so we'd play like Dynasty Warriors together or something like that.
I was gonna ask about
still
this.
love Muso games, by the way.
Dynasty Warriors is a game that we would like rent at the video store.
Yeah, it is.
You know, play a couple rounds of it, and then we'd be like, can we go return it and get something else?
What?
I'm gonna tell you what hooked me. What hooked me is that it was historical fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, wait a minute, you mean Liu Bei was a real guy?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah.
Was he this badass too?
They're like, kinda.
Yeah, what was his kill count? Was it how many
Did he
combos?
go on
kill
a 500 combo?
Yeah, did he kill 1,000 people? No.
That actually would be uncool if someone single-handedly. Whoa.
Yeah, no, but it's video games have always been a part of my life and my family's life.
Your dad played? Because I was going to ask
Yeah.
about that.
That's a really cool game to play with your dad too. I feel like Dynasty Warriors.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because it's simple, it's straightforward. We're on the same team.
right.
But yeah, so yeah, he definitely played a lot.
Did he have a console before? Like, did he?
Oh, yeah.
Arcades, and then he got the NES
Oh, yeah,
for
yeah,
himself,
yeah,
probably.
yeah.
And you guys
know
played?
what's so funny?
He got the
'Cause-
Genesis.
Yeah, before we
Genesis, yeah.
before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about Cyberpunk, and what cracked me up is I was thinking back on, gosh, I know this particular IP from somewhere, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and then I realized my dad was playing the Cyberpunk pen and paper.
I've been seeing
in
that
the
at Googling
80s.
it. Yeah.
And I was like, Dad, you played pen and paper RPGs? He's just like, just Cyberpunk. And I'm like, you never told me this. He's just
Yeah.
like, yeah. I'm like, whoa. I was like, why did you play that? He was like, oh, it was made up by a black guy. I was like, oh, that makes sense.
That's fucking cool. I don't know that.
Does he
shit.
still play games?
Yeah.
What's he playing?
Yeah. He's mostly playing, like, again, beat 'em ups. That's his genre.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You know, he'll play a beat 'em up. I'm trying to get him first. He won't do it. He just refuses to do it. I'm trying to get him to try a few other types of genres. I want,
Like a MOBA.
Something adjacent.
yeah, maybe. No, seriously, I want him to try it because he's a very heady guy,
Yeah.
and so I want him to maybe try a MOBA. I really want him to play Hades.
I've
He
heard a lot
just
of good stuff about Hades.
Refuses to do it.
What's his issue? I mean, it's like so praised. I think it was a game of the year for a lot of people.
Is brilliant.
I haven't downloaded it yet.
It's brilliant. I mean, for work, obviously, there's a lot of games that
Right.
we have a list we do internally, like somebody must play this.
Yeah.
How much time do you guys got to put into an individual game?
Not as much as we would like, obviously.
Okay.
Because a few of us have more responsibilities than just content creation. And so, you know, like I help run the internship. We do an internship now, so I'm the point person for that. There's other partnership stuff, very boring businessy stuff.
Yeah.
That's all we do.
Yeah, that's what we have to do. So I have a little bit less time to play video games, but the best part about it is that my fiance completely gets it. And so if I tell her, like, Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, and I told her, I was like, babe, I'm going to be up till sunrise, and I'm probably still going to be up when you get up, and I'm going to be playing this all weekend.
There's
And
a
she
good
goes,
chance
cool.
my eyes will be swollen and I'm crying.
Do you ever have to pretend like you're not enjoying it? Do you be like, oh, I just have to do it for work?
It's work. It's work.
Never.
Never. You can be honest
That's a
Never.
good
about
relationship.
Never.
Yeah.
I nerd out to her about things she could care less about.
And she
all the
lets you
time.
go?
And she just lets me go.
Does she game?
No.
No types of games
No.
or like board games,
None.
RPGs, nothing?
None.
Wow.
And I actually low key kind of like it because it gives me a chance to talk about something other than video games.
I bet that's...
And so it's actually very refreshing. There's a few. Every now and then she goes, "Can we play that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So we beat River City Girls last year.
I'm not even familiar with that.
Yeah, I don't know it.
A beat 'em up.
Okay.
Which again, I always say, if you got somebody who doesn't play a lot of video games and you just want to have a collective thing, just play a beat 'em up. Play a beat 'em up or Mario Party.
I played River City Ransom last weekend, and I was having the same feeling. Like,
so River City Girls is the same universe as River City Ransom.
Is it done in the same style?
Not the old school style.
Okay.
It's definitely updated, but she was into it because it was like these cutesy anime girls with like bats like knocking people over the head, and she was so into it. And I didn't expect her to stick through it till we finished. But I got home one day and she was just like, we got to beat it. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. It's time. She's like, it's time. Let's go. And so I was very, very happy with that. But no, she's not really a
Her
gamer
girlfriend plays Mario and she plays Fall Guys.
Yeah.
And she plays The Sims.
Yeah.
Those are like the three. I messaged her the other day that we should play It Takes Two.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't played it yet. And I just saw that it was like this cooperative experience, and I was like, this might be something I could get you into.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? She would kill me if I said this. She did play League for a little bit. She did play League for a little bit.
What a game for a non-gamer to play.
Yeah, and I was like, what?
How can you even comprehend what's happening?
She was like, yeah, I was playing it pretty deep for like a year and a half. And I'm just like, what?
Was she like, sit down, I have to tell you something. There's something I haven't told you.
It was one of those things where I told her, I was like, because I'm doing all this stuff for work, I'm going to have to get back in the League.
Yeah.
And she was just like, I used to play that. I was like,
yeah,
really? I was like,
Damn.
She was like, yeah, I was dating this guy. It was a weird point in my life. She was like,
we would duo, and he was bronze, and I was so much better than him.
Kinda, but it was weird. I was like, and I looked at her, I was just like, he made you play Lux, didn't he? She was like, yeah.
He couldn't get out of bronze 1, so they broke up.
What a toxic human.
I don't play that game.
Lux is not
I don't want to play that game.
I don't say it enough.
You both. I don't know what we're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
This is my soapbox. Lux is not a support champ, despite having a bind and a shield.
Let me tell you something. All right, and I tell people all the time, League is the worst game to ever get into ever, because once you're in, it's the Freemasons. Like there's no.
You said it was the cult the other day.
It's no way to get out.
You called it the cult yesterday.
You are in it. It's over for you. There's no way out.
We used to
I'm
have
stuck.
a buddy, dude.
If I have 45 minutes, and I'm like, shit. I got 45.
I could get one.
You know what?
I could do one.
And I just go, Earth's up. I'll play Earth.
I can't play Earth anymore because I have to take it seriously if I'm playing League. I don't have the like casual bone in my body for League.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't have it in any game. If my brother's listening to this, he's like, you don't play anything casually. So
I was that way with Overwatch for a while.
Yeah.
I just had to play comp. There was no way I was playing arcade. I had to play comp. It was no ifs, ands, or buts. And then I just
dropped it.
Yeah. Once I'm gonna be honest, once they got rid of goats, I was just like, you cave to the neck beards. I don't want to hear about this game anymore.
You lost respect for that.
I did. I don't like developers that do that. Make the game you want to make.
Yeah.
And leave it at that.
Yeah, Overwatch is one that I've wanted to play because I think the competitive scene's very cool. Valorant is one we're talking about, like starting like an in-house
Valorant's
team.
dope.
We haven't played it all, like any of the 5 of us.
Have you guys played CSGO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you'll be good at Valorant.
Yeah. I played Source actually, like way more than I played Go, but yeah, the similarities are obvious.
Oh, this will be Mario Kart for you.
All right.
I'm gonna be the best one. Yay.
I don't want to start this game and actually be bad at it. So it's good to hear that.
You'll be bad at it for a weekend.
Okay, I'll take it.
If you play Source or Go, you'll be bad at Valorant for a weekend because all the powers throw a lot of people off. Doesn't matter. That's just your utility.
Yeah.
So it's
focus
just like, all right, bam, okay, I'm Phoenix, so I'm the entry fragger. Da, 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 da. All the strategies are exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of obviously the competitive has actual strategies where I imagine the 5 of us will just be like, well, I guess we're all gonna rush A together.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
I'm gonna start with no strategy. I learned to ride a bike without training wheels, but only by falling off a small hill, probably for about half a year. That's not a lie. My sidewalk was fucked up, so I'd just take it from the top, and then I'd crash into the lamppost. But one day I got it. Yeah. We're gonna take it the same way.
I'm a firm believer that that's the best way to learn any game.
Fuck the manual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
Back in the day,
read the manual. Like, I would thumb through it, and if I don't see like a character bio, I'm like, trash.
The manual's for going in the car when you're in the back of the minivan.
I need lore.
Yeah.
If I don't have lore, I don't care.
And a notes page in the background.
Yeah. So your buffed on the League lore then.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's impressive.
I love the League
It's
lore.
so dense. I always, like, with the new ones, I try to, like, peek at it, and then I'm like, I just can't.
To be honest with you, that's what got me back into it. Is I was out for like something like 40 champions. Like, they have released that many champions by the time I got back in. And I was like, who are these characters? What are all their relationships?
When did you drop out? What was your timeline?
I played League for like a year.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. If you said 40 characters or something,
when
it must have
first
been
dropped. It was something
2011
dumb.
or something, 2012.
And I played it for like a year when it first dropped. Got completely out of it because I started playing Final Fantasy 11, which was I shouldn't have did that.
Final Fantasy 11 was released at a time when we had one computer at the house, and it was a monthly subscription, and I wanted to play so bad, and I couldn't get into it. My brother would play with his friends, and I would play with his friends. So, like, I was dragging his level behind as his friends grew in strength, and then I could never catch up. It was, like, so complicated.
It was so grindy, that game. And so, I played it for 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know the servers were active for 9 years.
It's still active.
Wow.
Final Fantasy 11 servers are still active.
Yeah.
Right now.
Even though there's Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, they're still active.
Wait, I
right
thought
now.
13 was the one that was...
14.
Oh,
14. 14 was the one that was so trash when they released it
That's
that
what I
they blew it
thought.
up and then brought
Okay.
it back.
I heard it was bad or something. I thought it was the online one.
Yeah.
You lose track?
Those are the two online
You do
ones.
lose track of around 12 or 14 games or whatever of what's what? I didn't play them, so I don't know.
You know what? And speaking to something you said to me earlier, I don't know. I've always prided myself on that. Like, I do have a very large reservoir of very pointless video game knowledge.
It's not pointless if it's your job.
It
Like, you
is.
fashion that into like a sharp stick that you
Yeah.
can just like make your way through the world.
I
with.
love it, man. Like, it's interesting, but it does come in handy every now and then. I remember I was at E3 2 years ago. No, well, now almost 3 years ago. And
Last year doesn't count in the timeline.
no, absolutely not.
not at all.
And the composer for Final Fantasy 14, I'm gonna butcher his first name. We just call him Soken. I saw him and I said, "Hey, Soken-san, what's up?" Doesn't speak any English, by the way. And so
Got the idea.
I am
Hand up.
trying my best to try to articulate that the soundtrack you made for this game is awesome, and I have no idea what the hell I'm saying.
Just ears.
I'm just,
Thumbs up?
I'm just, I just say hey, and I gave him the thumbs up. And just so happened, somebody from the 14 community who spoke Japanese, thank goodness, was around, and I was like, "Can you tell him like this soundtrack is so awesome? It means so much to me." And I literally just word vomited. I was like, "Can you ask him why he decided to use this chord on this particular song?" And he looked at me, and he went,
What?
and I was like, and he was just told the guy, and he got back to me, and he was just like, not many people ask him very specific music questions. He really appreciates it. This is why he did it. And he's
Could
like,
you share with
he's
us?
like 5'2", so he just vanished into the crowd. And it was like the weirdest experience, but this guy was so appreciative, and I think it's moments like that where that kind of sort of retention really helps.
Right.
Because I hate people who have to like go like, let me check. No, gotta be ready.
What chord was it? Do you know? And what song and why?
You know
I'm
what?
just
I don't
curious.
even remember. I think I know it was the song Fallen Angel, which is the Garuda theme. But I forget which chord it was.
Are you musical?
I played violin for like 10 years.
Okay. So, yes.
Yeah, that's
So-
a way of saying yes, by
So
the way.
I played violin for 10 years as a kid, and then in high school and early college, I did the whole rap thing.
Okay.
How could
so-
you possibly have time to play the violin on top of all of the gaming that you're consuming?
I didn't do homework.
Nice. That's the right answer.
I thought it was pointless.
There's more important things
Violin,
to
I
do.
can't even make a violin make noise.
Really? It's easy.
I've held a
Please,
bow
yeah.
to a violin,
Making noise is the
and
easy
I
part.
cannot make it make a sound.
Violin is like the easiest of the string instruments.
That's crazy to me.
easily.
There's no way that's true.
I hold a bass in my hand or a guitar in my hand, and I just go like, no, it just doesn't work. Violin, give me
the concept.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
It's
I
easy.
see it. Yeah.
It's easy. Yeah. So, I just think at the end of the day, when it comes to all this stuff, you say, how do you find the time for all this stuff? Is my best friend at 19 or 20 years old, we're having this conversation. And he says, one thing I'm learning is that none of what I learn is pointless. Everything has purpose. And I go, wow, you're real high. And he's like, yeah, but I have a point. And I go, yeah, you're right. And he was absolutely correct, because I look back on all the things I learned, violin, doing the rap thing, which now plays into the whole recording process of Checkpoint, knowing how to edit everything myself. You could give me this setup and a backpack, throw me in LA, and I could go to PAX by myself and do the whole thing alone. Yeah. And, that's part of that sort of guerrilla style stuff that we were doing at the beginning of Checkpoint that really, I think, helped us get noticed, because a lot of people were trying to be bigger than what they were. And we were like, no, we are 5 assholes who decided that we love video games enough to talk about them. And we, that's what we did. And everything I learned, whether it was formal, informal, from a video game, from a book, it didn't matter. It all kind of funnels into the same thing. And I think that's why I'm able to recall so much stuff.
I like that's where you're in, and that's why I remember things. Like, it's this beautiful arcing,
and that's why I remember stuff. By the way, I have terrible short-term memory for anything actually important. So
you call on it when you need it, obviously.
Yeah,
you can even call up a fucking speech. Do you see The Lighthouse, where he gives that long
Didn't see the movie.
Oh, never mind.
I actually want to see that movie.
You should see that movie, but there's a big long speech in it. Like, how'd you remember it? And I was in my head. Yeah, comparing it to that. That's all.
No, you know what? I think when it comes to there's a meme going around in gamer Twitter of stop crying, it's just a video game, and then they'll show a still of the most emotional moments in video games. And I think when it really stuck, and why I decided that this is definitely going to be something I do for the rest of my life, was playing through. And people look at me so weird when I tell them this story, is playing through Final Fantasy VIII, and I get to, there's this moment where they go on this mission, and they're in these boats, and they're storming this beach. And I'm like, yo, this is some Saving Private Ryan shit. And the music swells, and they go across the ocean, and it's just the moonlight, but you see the boats ripple the ocean, and it distorts the moonlight, and it pans up, and it's a war zone. And I'm just like, this is better than any movie I've ever seen.
Because you're in it.
And I'm in it, and they hit the thing, and the doors open up on the boats, and Squall and the party run out, and then it's pre-rendered backgrounds. So they run out, and these ugly ass low polygon models run out, and I'm like, why would anybody go and watch Chocolat when they can play this? Why?
You ever played the game Journey?
Yes!
It's the same feeling that I got when I played Journey, where I'm like, there is so much mystery, and it's if the game went like that around as I played it.
Yeah, and I'm really enjoying a lot of the indie games for that, because I think a lot of the AAAs have lost that sort of drive to really captivate. I think that's why people fell in love with 7 Remake so much, because they were able to take a story they told already,
right,
and get me to care about shit I never would have ever cared. Like, they made me care about Jesse and Biggs. Are you serious?
Right.
Do you think that part of it, because we talked about the remix, if that game came out today and it looked like it did in the remaster, or is it remix or is it remaster? Remaster. Okay.
Whatever.
Just checking. I didn't know. Do you think it would have the same reception? I think there is something to a low polygon count, or even we talk about indie games, where because it's not rendered to be so realistic, it's actually more immersive, because it doesn't approach the uncanny valley in the same way.
There's that, and I think it's because you have to rely on so many other tools.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of why, it's sort of why old video game music resonates more than new video game music.
I think so.
Because old video game music relied so much on melody because you didn't have the sophistication of being
palette
able.
wasn't there.
Yeah, well, not only that, you couldn't just call up the London Philharmonic Orchestra to come do your soundtrack. Yes. You had to literally sit there with a rolling 808 and go bleep, bleep, bleep,
until
bleep.
the buddy was like, "Hey, that's the track. I remember that one."
And so your melody had to be so strong, and that, you know, that's what memory is tied to. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing, I think, with sort of pixel based or low poly model stuff. Right. I mean, one of my favorite fighting games is King of Fighters 12. And really? It's because it's pixel based. Mm-hmm. I think the art looks way better than 13 and 14.
When you see like because you mentioned SNES being the best console, like there's moments on an SNES game where like it looks like it took way more effort to make whatever those models were than anything you slapped together in Blender for Cinema 4D. I don't know what they use, but Unity.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, I recall Final Fantasy VI, and if you ever get to the final boss of that game, and there's a track that plays called Dancing Mad, mm-hmm. and literally it is it's written to be like almost a 4-act mm-hmm. play, mm-hmm. and the composer Uematsu wrote it as if it was an opera, and so as you go through
that whole battle with Kafka is that's a work of
a work
genius
of art
and art
itself.
Yes.
Before you even get to the musical,
it feels like you're battling old Italian paintings.
Yes, and it was drawn that way and written that way, and mm-hmm. so when by the time he got to Uematsu to make the song, he makes this. I mean, literally, it's nuts. It's it's like 7.5 minutes long, which is stupid mm-hmm. for SNES soundtrack. And you go through the whole thing, and by the end of it, you think you would be exhausted, but like the tempo ramps up and everything gets crazy, and it just made me go like, the movies don't do this.
No.
They don't do this. They don't have the space. But for him to do that
mm-hmm.
with literal MIDI sounds, I mean, the creativity and the constraint is what you're talking about.
Well, that's exact constraint. And we were talking about Arrested Development last night, and I always think the second season is the sharpest because they lost 2 minutes off each episode when they made that transition, and it forced a much tighter writing. Like, creativity only comes from constraint. When you talk about movies, when you have a $1 billion budget, like, you just don't have limits. Yeah. So you just make a mess.
Yeah.
You don't make art, you make a mess.
Well, and that's how games are right now.
Right,
You were saying on your last episode of your podcast that God of War was so good because of how short it was.
Absolutely.
And AAA titles are elongating and just making them bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's something that continues to frustrate me with the industry as a whole, simply because I think when you talk about the length of a game, everybody thinks, especially from, if you're a millennial or, younger Gen X, everybody has this concept that a big game is supposed to be 80 hours long. Like, I remember when that was the cutoff point. It was like 80 hours long, or it's not a real AAA. It's not a real RPG unless it's 80 hours long. It's not a real AAA game unless it's 60 hours long. God of War is as close to perfect as a AAA game has been in a long time. And I think the length has a lot to do with that, because once the story was done, it was done. And I appreciated that about him. And I think it took a lot of balls for them to say, no, we're going to make a 25-hour game.
Right.
That's
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I have not played any of the God of War series. I'm very much not a single-player gamer anymore. Like, when I was younger, the only reason I was really playing Final Fantasy is because my brother was playing Final Fantasy, so I wanted to be a part of that. You seem like you've played every Final Fantasy, I'm assuming?
Every single one.
Did you go, what was your first one? Was it 7 was your first one?
7 was the first one.
Did you work your way back?
Yeah.
Or did you come back to it much later?
No, I worked my way back where I could. So I started with 7, and then by the time I finished that, emulation started becoming a thing, PC emulation. So I pirated like all the NES and SNES ones. And so I went back and played like the earlier ones, and then they started getting re-released and all that good stuff. And then from about 8 on, I played them as they came out.
As they came out. Yeah, 6, 7, 8 are like the 3 that I have countless hours on. I know the full story of. I remember I was playing 8 so differently than my brother because he's playing the game. I'm over here trying to get very good at like spamming square during the Guardian Forces and playing the card game and like having to go back to a save point because I missed the Angelo card. And like I don't know if I've ever beaten it, but I've seen like
Still
all the scenes. But I
still think Triple Tri is the best mini game they've ever done. But very closely second, followed by Blitzball. But yeah, I think it's interesting because I've said this on the show before that when we're talking about AAA games, I mean, Final Fantasy used to be the AAA game. Yeah. And then obviously your Halos and Call of Duties and stuff started to come out. But that used to be the marker. Is it as good as a Final Fantasy? And I think a lot of that got lost for a lot of reasons with Square Enix. But I think also it's interesting that Final Fantasy is becoming the sort of old man genre. It's becoming a older person's series. Because I feel like if you were 22, your context for Final Fantasy starts at 12.
Yeah,
which I feel bad for you because.
And if you're starting at 12, you weren't even... Because I was old enough where I didn't play 7, but I was still getting, like, the downstream effects. Like, it was still on G4. I'd see it all the time. It was in every magazine. I know all the characters' names of this game. I have not had the time to play. But if you start at 22, you don't even have that.
You don't even have that.
Where are you going to see that? You're not going to see it.
You're not even going to have it. But to your question about the whole competitive gaming thing, I think anybody who has a background in appreciating fighting games, that's the foundation of competitive video games, the foundation of esports as far as I'm concerned, in the same way that gladiatorial combat is the foundation of sports entertainment, if you will. I like to say boxing just to not be weird, but it's the same thing to me. When you think about the early, 1910s, 1920s, 30s, we start talking about boxing becoming this sort of sports entertainment phenomenon. That's kind of how I view like the fighting game community. And now as a part of the esports ecosystem, kind of as a whole. So I think you need to have a little bit of both in order to be a well-rounded gamer.
Sure.
So, last couple questions to wrap up real quick. What are you playing right now?
Yeah.
And then also, just because we're giving away a PS5.
Whoa,
what is your thought on a
special mystery guest?
We're going to bleep it. We're going to bleep it.
Yeah. I guess we've already
bleeped it
on the podcast.
Again, because we got one. Yeah. It took forever.
Yeah.
I want your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
I want your thoughts on the next gen of gaming.
Yeah.
And what you're playing right now.
All right, so what am I playing right now? I actually took a hiatus to read, so I wasn't playing.
What did you read? You can answer that too.
I was reading.
Dune.
It's a
Sweet.
It's a sci-fi book called A Memory Called Empire. That was really good. So I'm reading the follow-up to that one. It's called The Desolation Called Peace. So I'm reading those, but in terms of what I'm playing, Persona 5 Strikers. And Teamfight Tactics.
You playing that primarily on your phone?
No, everywhere. No.
Anywhere you can. Every time you get in the car, you're like,
anywhere I can play TFT, I'm playing it.
We'll have to play some TFT because I've been playing on my phone, but my battery burns up my hands, which is irritating. Which is why I don't understand mobile gaming, and I'm very interested in where Wild Rift is going to send us.
It's going to take us to the stratosphere. Mobile gaming already is the largest.
Devices are going to have to change in order to have an actual competitive, like Wild Rift scene where you're like plugged in. Essentially, it feels like it defeats the purpose for me that you're plugging in this wireless device to sit down and play a game that you could play at the computer.
Well, I think what's going to happen is we're just going to see play times go down. You're not going to have the experience of let me sit in this one place for 6 hours and play this game.
Yeah.
No, you're going to sit down for an hour and a half and play that game and then move on.
Have you played Wild Rift?
No, I haven't.
No betas or anything?
No, I haven't. I've been asking Riot and they don't want to
share.
I mean, the beta is coming to North America very soon.
Yeah.
But, I tried to be like, hey, I got
angle.
I got a VPN, but no, They were like, absolutely not. Riot is notorious for being hard to get.
Pretty closed.
Yeah,
circuit.
hard to get in touch with. But they're in my experience, I know they're going through a lot of stuff right now. But in my experience as a professional, they've been all right to me personally. But to answer your next question is, what do I think about the next gen in gaming? So there's two angles. The first angle is from esports. I think esports is going to push the industry forward in a lot of ways. I think when you got colleges, high schools, and elementary schools looking at gaming as a means of education, in the same way that in the 1970s and 80s they started looking at sports as a means of education, which we know ballooned into something completely different,
something perverted.
But it started, I think, with something earnest.
All things do.
Yeah. I think we're going to see that expand the industry in ways that maybe we didn't think about. I think you're going to see a lot of programs pop up that are going to get well known, especially here in North America. So I think that'll be a big thing. I think in terms of gaming as a whole, graphical fidelity is not going to be the measure anymore.
So agreed.
We're approaching a point where photorealism isn't adding anything to the experience. But what we are going to get is detail. Everything's going to go smaller. So in the same way people saw No Man's Sky and was like, look at how big and procedural generation, everything's going to go and get smaller. And so the, attention to detail between the small inflections of facial motion capture, the ability to enter every building you see, the ability to talk to every NPC, the ability to do those kind of things that in your mind's eye you go,
right, I
know why we can't do that. I think that's going to be the next sort of thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because I see what you're very bullish on mobile gaming and esports, and I believe in that entirely. But it seems like this is the generation where we finally leave behind the concept of console war series 1, series 2, episode 3. It's gonna photorealism, like you said. I don't know why we need 8K. No, I would rather play a really good $15 game on Steam that looks like it came out 20 years ago. That has what you're talking about.
Do you know one of my favorite games of the past few years is? Two of them they take no space. One of them is called Coffee Talk, where literally
I've seen Coffee Talk.
Run a cafe and there's people and elves and monsters who come into your cafe and you make them coffee.
This sounds like good training for all of our new employees.
Yes.
We should buy that to make sure they can
using
handle
it for promotional material here for our coffee. I just can use Coffee Talk.
Coffee Talk is great. Why? Because the music and the writing is great. Graphics don't matter. And another one is called Bury Me My Love, which is a mobile game, which is a story about a Syrian refugee trying to get to Germany. But it plays out in real time on your phone through a messaging app.
Wait. I'm going to put this in my phone so we're done.
Yeah, that's one more time.
It's called Bury Me My Love.
Bury Me My Love.
And literally, you could choose to do it immediate response, or you could choose to do it real time response, of which it will respond based on what time zone the character is in at that current time.
Wow.
So if it's 3 a.m. in Lebanon and the character is in Lebanon, she'll text you and saying, it's 3 a.m. I'm scared. I don't know if I can make it across the border. What should I do? And it was this harrowing emotional experience that I think was way. If it a lot of people gave praise to a similar game called Papers, Please, but I like Bury Me My Love a little more.
I hope our listeners have a pen and paper out, or I guess what I should just say is they're Chrome open on their phone.
Yeah, they're just going to click open the App Store, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This is why you talk to a games journalist, because first of all, great meta takes, but when you get into the details, this is what you actually get out of it, where it's I looked it up real quick. It's a game with 73% on Steam, and I know that's not because it's a bad game. I know it's because it challenged people to play something they didn't think a game could be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where the indies are doing a great job, but I think what the AAAs are doing a really good job on and need to do more of is a lot of people didn't like The Last of Us Part 2.
I heard, yeah.
And I tell people all the time, you didn't like it because it subverted your expectations.
True.
You thought you were going to play Game Dad and have a good old time. Yes. And when Game Dad got his head blown off or bashed in, whatever. Shut
You've
up.
had all quarantine.
It's a year old. Who cares?
Well, it's not just 1 year. It's old. It's quarantine year old.
Joel's dead.
Yeah,
anyway, so
that's the title of the episode, by the way.
All caps. Sorry.
It subverted expectations, and I fucking loved it.
Yes.
I loved that. I love the concept of understanding antagonists' motivations, all that good stuff. It was awesome. And was it my favorite game of the year? No, but it was very, very, very good.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be number one. And here's like the other thing. Like, I think if video games, because we've had this kind of settled science that lots of parts of video games can be art, but like if video games as a media want to be taken seriously and players want to be taken seriously, they have to be challenged in the same way that any book or movie would seek to challenge you. You can't be Superman in every game. Just some games, whenever you want, but like
just Superman. Or City of Heroes.
A Superman,
or Just Cause.
Just Cause,
sandbox destruction simulator.
There's room for that, but there needs to be room for Joel's dead.
Exactly.
We can't
and that's
shoot our
that's
pants.
what I think the AAAs need to do more of. There needs to be more of that.
Right.
It's an emphasis on writing, really.
Yeah. It's well, not even just writing, just have balls, man. Like
have balls.
Just have
That's
balls.
That's actually the episode title.
Just have balls. That's what I would say to any AAA developer. Have the balls to write the story you want to write, put out the game you want to put out, and stop making video games by committee, EA.
Oh. Thank you for parting shots at EA. Fuck this was every year.
I joke about EA, but I play a lot of FIFA, so I'm part of the problem.
FIFA especially of all.
I am completely complicit, and you know what? At the end of the day, you guys put out Jedi Fallen Order, so you're not all bad.
No one is, and that's the lesson of understanding an antagonist, I think. All right, man. Thank you so much for coming out. This was beautiful. I got a lot of good out of this.
Anytime.
It's fluid too. I feel like we didn't have to do much talking. You really know your stuff, but you also know how to swing your microphone around.
That's a good way.
That's a good turn of phrase.
I like it. No, thank you. And like I said, anytime.
Perfect. This episode is not brought to you by SpaghettiOs. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs.